Not all those who wander are lost. J.R. Tolkien. Welcome to Aegis Travel Adventures. We are Ken
and Gisele. We have been to over 100 countries and are still looking to see what is around the next corner. We love wine,
travel, and adventure. Listen to our podcast where we share the fun of the magical places, people, and cultures that have touched our lives.
Aegis,
Aegis,
travel,
travel,
adventures.
Welcome to Aegis Travel Adventures. This is Ken.
And hi, this is Gisele.
This is podcast number 21, and it's sort of a recap of our last trip now that we're back in the U.S.
Also, we want to wish Ken a happy birthday. He's 75 years young, as the saying goes. And this is part of what the podcast is about. We wanted to talk a little bit about traveling as you may not be 30 anymore.
So, some reflections on, being 75, but, we're still going strong with the travel. Been retired 10 years. 8 days after I retired, we were in Istanbul. It's like you have a bucket list, but it really keeps filling itself with new things. And so these last 10 years, other than COVID, we've covered a lot of ground. And we have a app called Tripped, yeah. And you can put in the countries you've been to and so on. And I'm at 110 countries. And but this isn't something that's happened in the last 10 years. My interest in travel has been as long as I can remember. And when I got out of high school, a person that was associated with our basketball team was going out west, and he was looking for some people to split expenses. So I'd never been west of the Mississippi, covered 22 new states during the summer, came back, and within a week I was up in Gainesville at college. Graduated from college 6 years later, and within 10 days I was in Luxembourg. Backpacker, and covered 34 countries in about 5 months, and a lot of that was really on the cheap. So, reflections on, a lifetime of travel, and, it's everybody's different and what appeals to them and why they want to travel. But from my side is, I think I said early on in one of the podcasts, is I'm always interested in what's around the next corner, but I'm interested in people, in cultures, the way people do things, why they do them, what's the differences they have from what we do. And I found that generally people they're all the same. They're friendly, they're accommodating, they have smiles largely. They like visitors and tourists. They want to show off their country. And I'm eager to find out what it's all about. And luckily, that quest for travel knowledge and experiences has not died down as I've aged. So that's some of my reflections, over the years. And well, people say, well, how many countries do you want to go to ultimately? I have no number. I kind of kept track of them, but we also keep track of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. We have a book on them and pretty far behind on,
writing things down or checking them off the
checking
list.
them off, so to speak. But, I do think they're some of the more interesting things in the world. So you can buy the book, you can get it online, you can get a checklist of it. It changes every year. They seem to add another dozen roughly. So when we travel, we always try to look for what the UNESCO World Heritage Site might be for the area we're going to be in. And
not that we always remember or write them down, but we do try. Yeah. Well, we just got back from our trip to Iceland, Europe and Iceland, and just for those of you who may be interested, we did 13,389 miles and 6 countries. That includes the U.S. So it was definitely a
52 days.
52 days, and we definitely were on the road quite a bit and traveling, but we had an amazing time. But I was going to ask Ken some questions about traveling as over the years. Obviously, I would say the big one is from back in the day when you traveled, you were a backpacker in college.
I was just graduated. In the 70s, backpacking was the big thing in Europe, and it didn't really matter whether you had somebody to go with or not. Everybody in the big cities would congregate around the American Express offices. You could meet people to travel with there. You would you took travelers' checks, and you would cash those in and get the foreign currency. So we would shop around the cities often for the bank that had the best rate, and it's generally just fractional. But the big book of the day was Europe. Back then was Europe on $5 a day, and I kept track of my money, but we slept on the ground. I would say 75% of the time we'd just find a park to go sleep in our sleeping bag to save money. But I averaged $4.44 a day. And when I arrived back at JFK in New York City, I had $1.11 in my pocket and a Gulf Oil credit card, which kind of got me back to Florida.
So obviously we don't sleep in the park anymore. Or let me put it this way, I don't sleep in the park, and so far Ken has not either. So our traveling game has been definitely upped as we've gotten older. But I guess one of the questions for you is regarding, as we all know, as we're traveling, convenience becomes more important for us that are not in our 50s. And things that may at times seem to be frivolous now seem to be a necessity. So are there some reflections that you would think that surprise you on our travels and that you have found interesting?
Yes and no, I think. Having traveled so much during my life, I think your mode of travel and it evolves, and you find out what you like. And I think from a culinary standpoint, particularly since I've known Gisele, we have moved towards making dining part of the experience of visiting a place. So we search out not necessarily the most expensive restaurant. That's not necessarily where I think it's at. It's where local foods are served well. Sometimes it is, a fairly well-regarded restaurant, but we have found that prices for restaurants and quality aren't commensurate. So, asking around, reading other reviews, I think you find a lot of opportunities to do things like that when you're traveling. And I think that also goes for places you visit. You could say, I'm going to Lisbon, but there's several side trips from Lisbon to small towns where there's interesting things to see. You can take on the train. If you just look at a guidebook of Portugal, a lot of that you might miss. So yeah, I think it has evolved. We like to rent cars, travel on our own. You see a sign. I remember we had rented a car in Jordan, and a lot of people kind of, when you say that, their eyebrow goes up, like, Jordan?
That's where Petra is.
and that was part of the thing. We wanted to go to Petra, but also the Dead Sea and some other places in between. And we're going down the main highway, the Queen something highway, and it was a nice road. And we see this sign, and it looks like a castle. And I said, you want to go down there? She goes, sure. So we turn off the road, and I'd say it was a good 30 kilometers from the main road, and it turned into a not so good road. And we finally got there, and it was an old Crusader castle. We had no information on it other than the sign we saw. Very interesting. There were researchers, archaeologists there working from the U.S., I think from University of Toledo. just a lot of things about it were interesting. But right next to it was an old Roman city. So obviously the Crusader Castle part came after the Romans, and in the Roman part, they were busy excavating and things, but there were some amazing mosaics there. Never would have seen it if we weren't being so adventurous that day.
Yeah, we were driving at that same place. I guess the tour guides or somebody was doing some reenactment of Roman whatever activity, whatever, and they were the nicest people there because we were probably the only ones that were not the excavators. You know, it was not very many tourist trap. And so they were so kind, and they were so excited to have somebody there to look at them and comment on their costumes. And isn't that custom in the country? Anywhere you go, they ask you for tea. And we had done a little bit of research, and I'd read that unless you're really pressed for time, it's considered very rude not to say yes. So Ken and I drank a lot of tea in Jordan. People that were helping us trying to find a street, invariably after a few minutes are like, hi, well, here's some tea. And you're like, well, thank you. And so you have a cup or two, and then you say thank, and you go on your way.
Oh, and most of them didn't speak English, so
And the tea is always like, yeah, thank you. So it was all good.
they would usually bring it out and show it to you because we weren't sure what they were saying. But,
Yeah, really, yeah.
But they were lovely people, and they always wanted to help you. And we did get to Petra, and ended up just outside of Petra having a flat tire. Turned around, and it wasn't quite flat, and it's the only gas station I saw around there. We pulled in, and the guy looked at it and negotiated a fix. I think it was about €5, roughly $5 or something. And he put a plug in it and pumped it up, and we went on our merry way.
And he gave me tea while we waited.
Yeah, and we were really lucky because, honest to God, I don't know if this car, it was pretty beat up. I don't know if it even had a spare tire. We didn't look. We probably should have, but went on our merry way, went to the Dead Sea and on. So, those are experiences that you remember the rest of your life, is the kindness of people and the cultural things about them. And it was a great trip. And still, when we talk about renting a car, to most people in Jordan, they just kind of look at you. And, we went on the bus from Amman down to the King Hussein Bridge, got off, went through some rigmarole, got on a shuttle, took us to the other side, which was the Israeli side, did some rigmarole there, and then we got on a bus, went up to the top of the hill, went through Israeli immigration, and then when a couple hours had gone by, they finally said, you're free to go. It's like, okay, so there's taxis, there's shuttles, there's buses, so we picked one. And we got to East Jerusalem and found a young man that had a car. It wasn't a taxi, and
It was a road taxi.
rogue taxi, and that was a story all into itself. And he took us to our hotel with a German girl that was really lost and not sure what to do.
And so we were kind enough to
Give
give
her a
her
ride.
to ride, and which is what we've done on more than one occasion, because we'll see these young kids traveling, and usually it's a girl by themselves, and they look a little bit lost, a little bit. So we're like, you know what, you can join us, and we'll take you to wherever you need to go. And then they're always like, here's my euros. I'm like, no, you know what, keep your money, because at one day in time you'll be where we are, and you can afford to give somebody, a young kid, a ride, because we all remember, as the saying goes, kindness to strangers. So my other question I had to Ken was, we've been traveling a bit, and like as I said, we've kind of upped our game. Are there things that you have discovered that you think are well worth it, or some things that you think that we really don't need to spend the money on? And you can be honest.
Well, obviously, luxurious travel is nice. We've done some business class flights with flat seats, mainly using points, airline points. And it's lovely. They come out and they bring you drinks, and they bring you a bag, and they have pajamas in them, and you put your little bed down and close your little door, and you can really stretch out and get some snooze, and a 14-hour flight.
Or longer, like a 30-hour flight.
Well, no, the planes don't go 30 hours without stopping, but yes, you stop and then you get on another leg. But yeah, the older you get, I think the harder it is when you get somewhere and you're just sleep deprived. and you look like the deer in the headlights trying to figure out, how to get to your hotel and get some rest. So, I think that's up in the game, and it's a neat thing. It's not cheap, and so you have to figure out what your budget is and what you want to spend your money on. And I think we've done that, and you can take fewer trips that are more luxurious, and you can take cheaper trips that are longer and less expensive. I mean, there's all kinds of resources out there for it. So yeah, I think probably the lay flat seats and the business class is something we've kind of moved up to and like for the longer flights, and we'll see how long we can afford it, or put it into our budget.
Well, one thing we've done is kind of added that into the quote, the budget of the trip, and decide if it's worth it or not. But having come back from Iceland, we discovered that we really enjoy just driving on, and the last few days of our trip, we, as Ken said, we rented a car, but it was really fun just going along, and all of a sudden, like, what is this? What is that? And so we've kind of rethinking our travel for the next few trips about, do we want to be a little more independent? And that was my other question. We've now done several really nice trips with different companies, Oat, Viking, etc. And we've come away with some thoughts on some good things and some bad things. So what are your thoughts on organized travel? That's not a blanket statement, I realize, but
I mean, everybody travels differently, and there's some people that they want to call their travel agent, and the travel agent says, "I've got you. You leave on this date. Here's your plane. You asked for business class, and we got you booked on this tour, so they'll pick you up at the airport, they'll take you to your hotel, and at the end, they'll take you to the airport, and you come home. And no fuss, no muss, all you gotta do is pay for it. I think we're a little bit different than that. This last trip, planes, trains, ferries, buses, rental cars, and the majority of it, we did it on our own. In the middle, we had this overseas adventure tour, but we had to get to a town of Selfos, which was an hour and a half away from Reykjavik. And, we figured out the bus schedule, put it on our phone, on the app, and, really weren't sure what it cost, but it seemed pretty reasonable because taxis that far were probably going to be several $100s.
At least.
And so we had been paying one ticket for senior ticket was like $3.20, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Or no, it was $2.40 because I remember now because when we got on the bus at the main bus station to go to Selfos, the guy, we put our phone up to the thing and it read it, and he goes, "You need 4 tickets." Fortunately, in Iceland, everybody speaks English, and we just looked at them, 4 tickets. Well, that was no problem. We had the app, and it was connected to our credit card. So we bang, 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 each of us. So 8 times, we got our 4 tickets. Well, it was just under $10. A taxi would have probably been at least $500 to get us there. They put our bags underneath the bus. It was very comfortable. The bus was probably a third full, and it was a nice little ride. And we got there, and we got off the bus stop, but just as we approached, we went over a bridge, and I'm looking, and there's our hotel on it. Because we were wondering, well, I wonder how far our hotel is from the bus stop. And the town wasn't that big, so other than Reykjavik, there are no big towns to speak of in Iceland. So it worked out just fine. I think you have to decide how you want to travel, and everything is arranged. If you go with the tour, the no fuss, no muss. They pick you up and they drop you off type thing. You know what you're getting.
And you see a lot, and the guides are, we can speak for a few companies, but we've done mostly overseas adventure travel, and the guides are amazing. We've never had a guide that wasn't just knew their stuff, but more importantly, personable and read the needs of the group, etc. So I have nothing negative to say about overseas adventure travel, except maybe the age of the group, and I mean,
Yeah.
that's the only thing we're reevaluating. But anyway, getting back to the topic on hand.
But if you're going down the road and you see a sign that looks interesting, they're not going to go.
Yeah.
If it's not on the itinerary, you don't go. And so, that's kind of the beauty of renting a car is near Vic Beach area. We saw a road and it was a sign and we said, oh, Black Beach. Well, let's go down there and look at it. Well, it turned out to be this fabulous place. There was hundreds of people there actually, but the really cool restaurant and a big parking area, but it had a lot of sea stacks and it was really neat. So
They had my favorite expression of Iceland. They had sneaker waves.
yeah,
So sneaker wave is when these waves on this beach that you think, well, it's very docile. The waves are very, very calm, and all of a sudden it'll have this massive amount of waves that just come in right after each other, and they're called sneaker waves.
and it snuck up on you and got
It
quite
did.
wet.
A sneaker wave snuck up on me and got me quite wet, but I had waterproof boots.
Yeah.
But the point is, and my camera didn't get wet and all that good stuff. But it was really fun. Ken's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Well, a sneaker wave got me, so it's all good." But that's just something that is maybe I guess as we've traveled this last trip, that we're reevaluating some of our upcoming trips. Maybe do a little bit more on our own, and maybe trying to kind of go back to what we originally did. Like I said, the group travel is wonderful, but I think we enjoyed the freedom of the last 5 days on our own, and we're maybe kind of rethinking a little bit. I mean, we were in one of the islands, Westman Islands, and we happened to run across these kids letting these puffins fly away.
Baby puffins.
Baby puffins.
They're
And
called pufflings.
Pufflings, and I got to hold one. It was the coolest thing ever. I think we said in another podcast.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Ken, any last thoughts of traveling as we age? Anything that you can, the tip of the day, if you will, for traveling when you age?
My tip is keep going and make it comfortable, and let it evolve the way you feel good about it. There's no set format for anyone, and so I think it's been evolving for us, and it's a good thing.
And it changes.
That's what evolving is.
Yeah,
to
well,
me.
I realize
It
that,
keeps
but-
changing, so anyway, this is our podcast. We just thought we'd do some reflections, and we're back in the U.S. and we're settled into our beautiful home, and we're enjoying it. But 1 month from today, we head for Antarctica.
So if anybody has any tips or suggestions for Antarctica, we would love to hear them. So again, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
See, ages,
Ageless.
travel,
Travel.
adventures.
Adventure.